In a developed city, in Australia, B feels the urge to pee and wants to get to the bathroom quickly. B stopped at a cafe, but the bathroom was only for customers, and the queue was very long. A nice man offered B a coffee as if he knew her, so B could go to the bathroom. They were both attracted to each other at first sight. The man's name was Ben. B thanked Ben for helping her, smiling sweetly. Ben offered B to walk for a while to get to know her better. It turned out that the two of them were a good match, and caught each other's jokes and laughter. Their conversation was also smooth, until Ben took her home. They cooked and told long stories, including Ben, who talked about his mother and began to open his heart. That night they had fun. But the next day, B woke up first. B felt confused about what she should do, and for some reason, she left Ben. When her friend told her that her behavior was stupid, B went back to Ben's home. But Ben was already disappointed because Bean left him without a word. So he told his friend that he didn't like Bean, and instead want to leave her immediately, making Bean hurt, who heard it there. 6 months later, fate brought them together again. Bean's younger sister Hallie is going to marry Ben's best friend Claudia. B and Ben argued about the past, telling their friends that they actually knew each other. The argument was getting hotter. Bean wanted to leave this place immediately, but they promised not to act up for the sake of their two friends who were getting married soon. A few days later, Bean received an invitation that her sister would be getting married in Sydney. Coincidentally, on the plane, Ben was also on the same plane. Ben approached Bean again and still discussed his previous annoyance. The woman was actually engaged, Ben found out when Bean told him at the nightclub a few days ago. But today she wasn't wearing a ring. Making Ben even more mocking Bean. Did she run away again like she used to? But Beans just ignore him. That night when Bean wanted to pee and came back with Ben in front, she casually saw a cookie and took it, but her clothes got caught when she accidentally pressed a button on the seat. A woman next to her saw Bean making it look like she was having sex with Ben, but she ignored it. When the woman approached Ben, she heard a song from Ben. It seemed like it was a song that calmed her down and was also her favorite song. A few moments later, B was able to pull her clothes that were stuck, and she goes from there. When they arrived at the airport, Pete took them both to his house, where his wedding would also be held around here. There Ben met again with Margareta, his childhood friend, and also his ex. But Margareta now has a new boyfriend, making Ben look a little sad. While Bean was having fun with her sister didn't expect that she would get married first, because when she was little, Bean was the one who always told stories about how he dreamed of marriage. But regardless, she was happy for her sister. When she got home, Bean found his letter of release from university. She decided not to continue her studies to become a lawyer, but she hadn't told anyone about it. When Bean's father and mother came, they urged Bean to get back in touch with Jonathan, her ex, who had played and accompanied Bean since he was 11 years old. Although the woman seemed unable to have feelings for Jonathan, Bean finally became stressed and cried in the bathroom. Meanwhile, Ben also continued to look at photos of himself with Margaret. He seemed to still love Margaret. That evening at dinner, the two extended families had gathered. Claudia's family also came all the way from Australia. They said a speech praying that everything would go smoothly until the wedding stage would take place. After that, they played games. Unfortunately, Bean and Ben ended up in the same group, and their annoyance still didn't seem to subside. So they ended up making a scene that caused a small fire. Margaret immediately put out the fire, but the atmosphere became unpleasant. Hallie and Claudia were increasingly worried that their friends would cause more trouble together, so they thought of a way for B and Ben to get along. They knew that B actually intended to apologize that day when she left Ben. But she just didn't have time when Ben had said that Bean was a disaster to Pete, which was heard by Bean at the entrance. So they intended to straighten things out. The next day, Pete and his stepfather talked loudly and made up that Bean still liked Ben, and actually Bean really enjoyed the night with Ben, making Ben think if all of that was true. On the other hand, Hallie and Claudia also acted the same as Pete and his father did, but Beans immediately knew what they were planning and didn't get carried away. When Ben entered the room, Claudia's mother also asked for their help. She said that Roger's sunglasses were left on a ship in the middle of the sea. She asked them both to swim there to get the glasses. It turned out that Ben couldn't swim far because he rarely did cardio. He soon ran out of breath before B helped him. B understood Claudia and Hallie's efforts to unite her and Ben, So she told Ben to just follow their words and pretend to be dating so as not to worry them, at least until the wedding was over. B's parents, who were too worried, also brought Jonathan here, making the woman even more depressed. So she thought pretending to be dating wasn't a bad thing. Meanwhile, Ben also wanted to make Margaret look at him again. B said that if they were dating, Margaret would regret dumping Ben, because women basically want to have what they can't have, like a child's game. Even though it was common, B was still sure it would affect Margaret. So finally they agreed. When they returned home, they started acting like a couple, including in front of Jonathan, who could only congratulate them. A few moments later, they went climbing the hill. B now told her father and mother that she and Ben were dating. Jonathan, who was hurt, couldn't accompany Bean climbing at that time. They both kept thinking about plans on how to look more convincing. In the middle of the road, they made out, even though it seemed a little strange at first, making Margaret pay a little more attention again, even though they often seemed to be walking separately. When he returned home, Ben also tried to get closer to B's parents. Ben taught B's father how to float on the water quickly. B's mother said she had to teach her mother to swim too, but Ben said her mother had died. Bean, who heard this, was also sad. It turned out that night he didn't want to discuss his mother further because it wasn't a pleasant story. A few moments later, B met Jonathan again. This time they had time to chat. Jonathan said he had nothing to do with all this, that his mother was the one who gave him the ticket to come here, not knowing there would be a wedding. He understood that Bean didn't really have feelings for him, even though he hoped his love could be reciprocated. But he still supported Bean. They played again like when they were little. On the other hand, Ben also now got attention from Margaret. Margaret makes his coffee and tries to seduce him again. She says she is looking for someone more serious, and her current boyfriend is just for fun. Margaret also seduces Ben again by bringing up the past, making Ben nervous if he will have another chance. After that, Ben knocked on B's room in a hurry. He said that they now need to make this more serious because everything seems fake. So they also made up a story about how they first met, their anniversary, and so on. The evening was approaching night. They had rented a boat for dinner. B wore a very beautiful blue dress, making Ben a little fascinated. They drove to the pier. The pier was quite far and they took several cars. When they arrived, Ben carried Bean affectionately, making Margaret a little jealous. On the boat, they also danced and played good music. Food had also been prepared. B wanted to make this even further by posing like the Titanic in front of the boat, although Ben said it would look very cringe. But B was sure it would affect them. So they posed in front of the boat while enjoying the increasingly gentle night breeze, making Jonathan and Margaret jealous. But when Bean was about to get off, her feet tripped over her long dress, and she fell into the river. Ben did not hesitate to jump down without first telling his friends. As a result, they floated in the sea for a while, before B's mother realizes that her daughter has fallen to the river. Ben and B had now really fallen into the river like the Titanic movie. They climbed to a pole in the sea, waiting for the helicopter to come and pick them up. Bean told Ben a lot, and the two opened up to each other. Bean said that she dropped out of her law studies and that she broke up with Jonathan. Bean felt that Jonathan was a good man, but he seemed too perfect, to the point that she couldn't talk about small things to Jonathan for fear of disappointing him. Ben also admitted that the night was actually a beautiful night. He didn't mean what he said to Pete. The two of them bonded again. A few moments later, the helicopter came to pick them up. When pulled, Ben turned out to be afraid of heights. The man said he always had a routine when he was flying. So B sang a song she heard while on the plane with Ben, and that finally calmed Ben down. They were finally rescued. The police car took them back to the house. Ben went back to cooking the first dish he made for Bean. The bread was hot, so Ben tried to blow on it. Bean couldn't help it and immediately kissed Ben. They made out and spent the night sweetly. But in Ben's heart, he still felt a little doubt that Bean would leave him again, when he kept thinking about the possibility. Ben finally left Bean, while Bean also realized that it made her heart sad. The next day, Ben returned to reflect in the middle of the beach. Bean also reflected in the pool. But this was not the time to be sad because it was Claudia's wedding day with Hallie. Hallie told Bean to pick up their wedding cake with Margaret that had been ordered. At the cake shop, Margaret asked if she and Ben were really together. Bean said no. They were just forced to be together because of the circumstances that forced them. She also said that Ben actually liked Margaret. On the other hand, Ben was also confused and told Pete. Pete said it was definitely Bean, and told him not to run away again this time. Every time this happened, Ben ran away and chose to start over. This time it was definitely Bean's true love, so Pete advised him not to waste this opportunity. But in the conversation, Ben let it slip that Bean had dropped out of law school. When he returned, the atmosphere became even more tense when Pete told Bee's parents about her law school. Bean is very angry with Ben because he leaked her secret, even though they will also know sooner or later. But Bean feels that it should not be decided by Ben. So they scold each other, making the atmosphere even more heated. Added to that, the dog that knocked over the wedding cake. Claudia was very angry because of the incident. She fought with Hallie because the situation did not get better. Seeing that made Ben feel bad. He visited Bee again, and they agreed to have to do one last show. The wedding party continued. They promised not to make any more noise. With the decorated car, they headed to the edge of the cliff where the wedding would be held. Regardless of everything, Claudia and Hallie expressed their love for each other, and both promised to protect and look after each other, before finally kissing to symbolize their love story. During the wedding party, Bee's father and mother apologized for putting so much pressure on Bee. They just wanted Bee to be happy. Bee understood what her parents meant and hugged them. Everyone was having fun. Margaret asked Ben to dance. Margaret said she realized her love that had slowly grown in the past few days for Ben. She kissed Ben at that time, making Bee even sadder seeing that. Bee finally chose to leave the place for a while to calm down. In the crowded city, Bee called a taxi. Bee cried inside. Her feelings were mixed. While Ben said he was not sure if he still liked Margaret or just holding on to a sweet memory. Ben went looking for Bee, but couldn't find her anywhere. The whole family at the place now convinced Ben to go after Bee immediately. Ben asked Hallie where the woman went, and it seemed like Hallie had heard her sister say she wanted to go to a romantic place where people get proposed to. Hearing that, Ben immediately knew where Bean was going. He drank coffee and jumped into the river. Ben told his friends to call the helicopter again. He knew that the Sydney helicopter would take him to an iconic place in Sydney. Ben now arrived at the place he believed Bee was. He ran towards Bee, who was blushing sweetly. Ben told Bee all his feelings and promised not to run away again this time. The two kissed sweetly, indicating their relationship that would soon start from this stage and so on. That night at the wedding party, now a couple who initially did not get along, became a shining couple that night. Bee played Ben's favorite song again as a dance song. The end. Thanks for watching this video. If you like it, make sure to subscribe. See you in the next video.